And before we get into our next roundtable discussion, we wanted just to share a few things with Russell, with your mic unmuted, to say, Russell, how do you feel about that discussion that we just had before? What an incredible way to kick off GatherVerse Youth Summit. Yes?
Absolutely. It was, honestly, there was so much dropped there. And I think the two main points that came out of all that was, number one, obviously hope. And number two, I think, was trust. I think those two were referred a lot within the entire roundtable discussion. And, I think those both are fundamental to any young person these days. In A, looking forward to the future, and also B, being able to trust people, trust relationships, trust AI, trust emerging technology, being able to trust anything. Like, trust is a fundamental, I guess, foundation for anything, really. So whether that's a loving relationship that you have in the future, whether that's, trusting what your teacher says. So yeah, no, honestly, it was such an interesting roundtable discussion. I think it was fantastic, and a fantastic way to kick off the entire summit today.
Why is trust so important? We've had a number of different summits so far here in 2025, but we know thematically the trust seems to be rather persistent. Why is that, Russell?
I mean, trust, the reason why trust is so important is because having trust and authenticity and truthfulness, like being able to trust someone, is extremely important, because if you don't trust anyone, you're always going to be second guessing what they say, what they do, how they are, how they act. And if you don't trust someone, then how can you build a relationship with them? How can you build anything with another human, like another identity in general, or even AI, right? How can you trust AI, and how can you trust what that says to you? So I think trust is so important, because you need to be able to build or have a way in which you can trust what something says or what something does, right? Because if you don't have that, then you're never going to trust anything. And then if you never trust anything, then you're not going to be able to achieve anything in life, right? And I think trust is just one sort of pillar within many other pillars.
It seems to me the same could be expressed when we want trust for humans, for people that we would like the same when it comes to our innovations.
Correct. And here's the thing, when I was younger, I was told never to trust anything you read, right? And that was just even newspapers, right? And you always needed a way in which you could verify something was real or not. And many years ago, there wasn't a way to do that, right? Whereas now, there are ways in which that can be done. So, for example, you have third-party sources that you can go through to verify if a news article is real, or if someone says something is real. You've even got X, right, where you can do it through community collaboration and be able to verify things. So being able to verify something and find out if it's the real truth and being able to trust that, that's very fundamental and key in allowing trust, right? And allowing to, believe in what is real and what is not. Because if there's no way to identify what is real, what isn't, well, then how do we know if even the world that we're living in now, like right here, like as I'm sitting here speaking to you, is even real, right? So yeah, I think trust is fundamental in every single way, shape, or form.
It seems to me, Russell, in this closing few seconds before we call up our incredible roundtable that we have next, that when it comes to trust and verification, not only do we need better innovations when it comes to trust and innovation for these products and platforms and protocols and applications that we're undoubtedly inheriting at a rapid clip and hyperscale, but we also could benefit and stand to benefit to tap within our own hearts and minds to be able to find ways for us to be able to not only trust others, but to have trust and to be able to discover it and locate it within.
Correct. And I'll finish on this. Unless we have a future that trust can be done and verification can be done, and allowing that to happen and blossom, then especially with AI, it's as we say, we want to have a hopeful, better future, right? And that's what everyone wants. And verification and trust will allow that to blossom.
We have so many people that are with us at GatherVerse.live. To be candid, I didn't know that we would, being that it's spring, and especially here in the West, that people would have the time to, but it's so evident here. And then we do have some people that are even hanging out on our social media platforms, which are great as well. But we're so thankful to see everyone that's come to join us at GatherVerse.live audience. We're certainly with you, although we know we don't have a way for you to communicate directly with us, save for the emails and messages that you do send. We certainly, our hearts go with you, and thank you for spending time with us. And Russell, we have so much more to unpack, but for now, we're heading into technology and transition, balancing innovation and responsibility with a very well put together powerhouse roundtable that we're about to explore. And I know that you have a roundtable coming up, Russell, and so we're looking forward to spending more time with you as we arrive.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Russell. And to our audience, prepare for what's next, and may our gather be well. Greetings and welcome everyone once again. We're certainly happy to have you for the second roundtable discussion here at GatherVerse Youth Summit 2025. Roundtablists, we welcome you, and we do ask that you would mute your mics at this time. We have quite a bit to unpack, as we did in the first roundtable, to kick off this discussion. But now I have before me incredible visionaries, leaders, and those that are truly putting in work, of whom we've had the pleasure of being here at GatherVerse before, and some for the very first time. But undoubtedly, knowing that from seeing everything that all of you have done, even as of late within the past few years, I'm really thankful to be able to assemble with you today. Undoubtedly, audience, you are about to explore into a cosmos of great thought, of anticipation for what it could be in the future of our youth, leading from generation to generation. You are in the presence of experts and leaders and those that do it humbly and graciously. I want a roundtable is for you to be able to, one, let the audience know who you are and why did you take the time to be able to ride with us today. Emily, we'll kick off with you, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Emily Wright. I'm the creator of It'll Be Alright. I am a specialist in the psychology of discrimination and bias, and I host digital wellness workshops and seminars at local schools. It's cool to be at this point. I'm a zillennial, so I'm right in between Gen Z and millennial. So I remember life before cell phones, but I don't remember 9/11. So I'm in that kind of interesting gap there. I have a lot of friends and peers that are Gen Zers, so I am very aware of the impact of technology and culture on that generation and on mental health and mindset. So that brings me here today, and that inspires what I do. Thank you, everyone.
We welcome you in the entire Zillennial populace, if you will. And that's my first time hearing it. I am a Zennial, and that's a mixture between a millennial and Gen Xer. And a lot of Gen Xers don't believe that that's actually a title that exists. But in my mind, at least in my mind, it does. Elena, we're happy to have you with us.
Yeah, I'm super happy to be back. So thanks for having me. Also, what a wonderful panel discussion there was for this one. Like I had a look a little bit, and it was really nice to hear words about hope. I really hope there's going to be positive notes also in this discussion. So I'm Elena. I'm a blog founder and political economist based in Brussels. And today I'm going to speak also a little bit about a pro bono project I work on, which is this European Union Institute for Research, which is a very young think tank. And I research also with them for free, as in the past I benefited a lot from older people mentoring me when I was starting as a researcher. So I wanted to shed a light also on this project of mine.
We greet and welcome you. Thank you so much, Elena. And Carrie, welcome.
Hi, and thanks, Chris, for the invitation to join this conversation. I'm Carrie Pasquarello, victim advocate, safety strategist, CEO, author, and a proud mother of 3 children. And my mission centers on protecting our most vulnerable, especially our youth, through our community awareness and prevention programs. And why this conversation is so important to me is the digital world isn't just a space for our youth to connect, learn, create, and grow, but it's also where they can face real threats. And as a safety strategist and a victim advocate, I have seen firsthand how technology can both empower and endanger. And so I want to help shift that focus from being reactive to proactive through education and awareness. So thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Carrie, and thank you for the work that you're doing for betterment for all. And that's so much to what we're going to lean into today as well. And last but not least, Nadja, we welcome you once again.
Chris and everyone, yeah, happy to be here. So happy to see familiar faces and new ones as well. Thank you for this amazing gathering, as always. I'm Nadja Bester. I'm the co-founder of Adlunum. We build Web3 behavioral infrastructure. And my background is in psychology, education, systems, startups. So I think I've spent a lot of time over my career and my life thinking about, how people behave inside systems that were not built by them, and most of the time also were not built for them. And I think, this very pertinent discussion that we are having today about the youth, the next generation, and I loved how it kicked off immediately with all the different generations, and I'm this and I'm that. I have a Gen Z son that I world schooled, so I've had firsthand experience. I'm a millennial, so I'm that stereotypical, we can never afford a house, we are doomed to forever kind of, walk the lands of the lost. But at the same time, I'm also, I work in tech, and I see that tech affects everybody. It might affect you differently depending on where you are at in your life stage. But I think never before has it been so important to bring in the youth and give them a seat at the table while they're still young and before they have any credibility. Because I think that's what was done with us, at least the previous generations. Sure, we'll put you up here as a poster child, but we don't actually want to hear what you have to say. You have to be a little bit older for that. So happy to be here, and perhaps not speak as a youth, but at least, keep in mind that ultimately we are giving them the seat at the table, and this is open if they would like to join. Very happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Nadja, and we're very happy to have you here. Roundtable panelists, we're very happy to have you as well. Audience, we're very happy to have you as well. And thank you for still assembling with us here at GatherVerse.live as we unpack. With a little bit of time that we have, panelists will stay on script and off script as we navigate and move forward in having this very candid, open, and transparent conversation. We certainly allow for anyone to chime in when they feel. I will be calling on a number of you to be able to segue into this, and we'll operate today at this particular panel in a rapid fire, since we have a hive mind. There's a lot that I want to extract from the confines of your mind, given the firepower that's before me. And as you know, we take this very serious, as we should, with this limited capacity that we have. Carrie, we talk about transition, where we find ourselves in, and the reality is we've never seen technology adopted, subscribed, and innovated at this rapid clip as we see in what we call the hyperscalers that are hyperscaling, not only here in Silicon Valley, but transmetropolitan, transcontinental around the world. We're seeing Europe kick in when it comes to innovation. We're seeing the same thing in the UAE, elsewhere, Asia, so forth and so on, in Oceania, South America. We're seeing innovation come to our shores, not weekly and bi-weekly, but daily. not even bi-daily, but daily, there's new AI model technologies that are deployed, and not just new models of small and large language foundational models, but new types of innovations that are integrated ecologically into these models. And they're cross-pollinating with technologies such as on-chain, if you will, and immutable ledgers that are needed. But the bigger question that I have, because we are in transition right now, aren't we? We're going from one way of doing a thing to another. And it's so fitting for this particular summit that we talk about our youth, because I think although we have all, if you will, mentioned to some degree about the generations that we come from, the days of our youth are certainly not what we find out, what we see in 2025. And our youth and future forward have a whole different world that they're heading into. And just as it was when we were young, we found ourselves at a transition, but not quite as volatile as this. My question is this, Carrie: what are we needed to be equipped with when it comes to transitioning safely into the new frontier of intelligence that we find ourselves arriving to?
Right. And that's such a great question. As somebody who focuses on risk mitigation, I believe we have so many responsibilities as we're looking at this new tech. Is not only can we develop this tech, but should we? And then in another line is, how can we prepare our youth to do it safely? And so one of the areas that I always focus on is the SEEK model, and that is safety, empathy, empowerment, and knowledge, making sure that our youth has the foundation to be proactive with their safety and security as they're blazing through this universe with this technology that is just so fast. So, having that SEEK model, the foundation created, making sure that we have education, the foundation for being able to identify some of the hazards that are in front of us. And then, of course, having the resources available should you need them. That's where I start.
But how do we start? How do we actually relay the SEEK model to the generations to come and that are arriving?
Right. So when I go through the SEEK model, we start with first empathy. And empathy and innovation means designing with care, putting ourselves in the shoes of our users, and anticipating how technology impacts their life. So oftentimes when I'm looking through the lens of safety, I always want to find out, how is this technology going to impact our youth? What repercussions will happen if something goes wrong? And then making sure that we're covering all the what ifs to make sure that we have a full view of what the youth are stepping into. So once again, it's stopping, it's taking the time to have a conversation about how can we navigate in a safer manner.
And what is the hope when implemented successfully? What does success look like of implementation of this SEEK model?
Right. Well, the ultimate goal would be that there'll be excellent mental health. We want to make sure that they're striving for creating a better future for themselves. It means that it's bringing people together to work collaboratively, really bringing our universe together in a smaller space, even though it's so large.
Incredible. And thank you for sharing that. We always want to leave with the air of optimism if we're afforded to. And there's a lot of different frameworks that are out there that exist. And we are so good at highlighting the problem. But my goodness, let's get to the benefit of why we want to address these frameworks and implement ecologically within the systems in which we inherit and operate within. So thank you so much for graciously explaining that, Carrie. We'll come back to you in just a moment. But Nadja, as someone that's a Web3 on-chain blockchain expert and someone that deals with this very cutting-edge, state-of-the-art, different types of technologies that are cross-weaving, interacting with one another. When we talk about the question that's on screen, how do we define responsible innovation in today's technologically advanced world? First of all, when we talk about responsible innovation and innovating at such a high clip, there's some that believe in this world that we must remove the vestiges of safety and trust out of the way so that we can operate even more efficiently and more fast. I'm of the belief that two things can be true at the same time, that we can operate ethically and innovate safely and fastly and accelerate at the same time. Does this register? And if it does, what does that mean when we look at the incredible technologies that many of us still to this day are unaware within the Web3 ethos?
Yeah, where to start? First of all, I would say I'm not sure that we are only now having to decide whether designing for safety is something that we should be doing or not. I think systems took a decision a long time ago to forego safety for the masses in favor of those that are benefiting from the system. So on the contrary, I think what has been happening over the last, it's quite difficult to know how far to go back. Do you go back to the 60s with the hippies, or do you go back, to the 80s with the cryptographers, or do you go back to Arab Spring? How far do you go back to say that we are clearly in a new kind of revolution, and that revolution is so multi-layered that I think the revolution ultimately is a redefining of definitions. So when we talk about innovation, we have a track record of innovation at all costs. The atomic bomb was innovation, right? And we learned too late that just because you can innovate doesn't mean that you now should play God. So the exact same thing is happening, of course, with AI right now. I care very deeply about us saying that, hey, we are actually designing this for the humans that live on this planet. But I'm also very well aware down on the ground that is just simply not how it works in business. So I think the point that we are coming to now is asking ourselves, when we talk about innovation, what does it mean to innovate? Because if I'm innovating for my investors, that's not innovation. Innovation, I think, has to be redefined. We have to say if it's innovation at the cost of things that we can't take back after we've lost them, or if it's innovation that's going to lead to large-scale fill in the blank, that we then have to take a step back. But the reality is we haven't ever, and I'm not sure we are going to start now as a system. The difference is now we have individual people. There are some people, if we use the example of AI, that are too scared of AI. Many Gen Zers, for example, it's weird. I find it weird, but they don't seem to find AI as captivating, for example, as some of us do. So I think there's a lot of people that kind of say, this is new, this is sketchy. I don't know if I can trust this. I think the larger conversation should be, hey, let's put everything on the table and let's start defining if you actually could ever trust this, and can you trust it now? So I think it's a very exciting time to be defining what does it mean to responsibly innovate. It's never going to be something at a board member meeting. It's always going to be something that's grassroots. And I think now more than ever, the technology exists for people to understand that they can empower themselves. And I think ultimately that's the kind of ground up or bottom up innovation that we need. People need to say, hey, I'm engaging with these tools on a daily basis. I'm not sure I like how this is going. But then that's a larger conversation about when do people think and how, what prompts them to think. So yeah, hopefully we'll get into that during the panel.
We will, and I also want to get into with you in particular about the cadence and the tempo and the accelerated fashion of innovation, and have we missed the window of opportunity to be able to catch up, Elena, with the work that you're doing when it comes to think tank, if you will, in the process of thinking. We are seeing many, many and several different think tanks coming together, arriving with the intent to understand how do we tackle and confront this sizable scale of innovation that it was beautifully expressed with Naja saying that's multi-layered. How apropos to be able to express such a thing when it comes to this transition. I've never heard it stated that way, but yet it's so anyhow. Elena, what are the thinking and think tanks when it comes to this? And do you find that it serves to the benefit of our youth and generations to come? And in this thinking, are there actionable steps that you believe that are being assembled so that we can keep up with the current and present rate of hyperscale?
Yeah, that's, as always, a fantastic question.
Hold off on that, Naja. I routed that over for Elena. We'll get back to you.
Please, Elena. Happy to hear from you.
We can reply that together with Naja, because I think she touched on so many right points, and I think it's also interesting to see the difference from Europe to the US, because one major issue I think is that what is in Europe for young people is this thing of especially when it comes to policy, because the think tanks I work in are policy think tanks, is that you always have a set way of expressing yourself or channeling your ideas. So in Europe, I think it's very difficult to have an innovative idea and to implement that innovative idea. And if we go to the basis of innovation, grassroots, as Naja said, innovation is about something new. It's about also new people. And Europe, especially in certain countries, has specific classes of people that have better skills, better education, that have access to innovation. And then there is very big parts of the population that completely access even the possibility to innovate, I think, which is the real problem, because you're not going to have new ideas if you don't have new people. And then you're required to make those ideas come true according to very rigid standards in Europe, including in think tanks. I was very lucky so far that I had a few of my own projects, so I could set my own standards. But many, even researchers in Europe, they don't have that luck. So they're said, like, if you want to write something like this, then you're going to have, like, I don't know, 10 editors, and they're going to take out part of what you said because it's like not in line with what you're supposed to say. And I assume this is even more problematic when you do business like Naja. So I think it would be interesting to see how that compares with the US, because I think many, like, businessmen, businesswomen, when it comes to Europe, they also cannot access doing innovation in Europe for this reason, because for them it's difficult to understand these rules. And this is something that I'm very worried about, to be honest, because I think innovation in Europe is going to decline if like non-Europeans are not going to be able to access our innovation market, but also if a lot of young Europeans are not to be able to access innovation, because not just because they don't have the financial resources, but also because they don't have the education for that. Because if you don't have, for example, like a mentor or a family member that can teach you how to be a businessman, for example, you're not going to find that very easily. And to be honest, I even think if you're like a big tech CEO coming to Europe, you would definitely need a mentor right now. I don't know what's your experience, but
I find that rather interesting, is the consideration that if we aren't guiding the generations to come, then AI certainly will, won't it, Emily? And my concern is that if I go back not too long ago in the not so far distant past of looking at hyperscale accelerated fashion into applications renaissance from 2007 circa to 2019, if you will, that these technology platforms here in Silicon Valley and elsewhere became wildly and dramatically wealthy overnight. And platforms were deployed that have never reached our shores before, our hands, in democratized fashion. We were given tools and applications. I think about this, Emily, in the sense that today's innovations, these aren't just applications we're building. These applications speak to us. They talk to us. They can see us. They can hear us. Some, with the capability, sooner rather than later, will be able to examine our very own dispositions. I say all that to say, in a very 40,000-foot fashion, Emily, I have a real concern when it comes to the ethical or unethical governance structures, when it comes to trust, and when it comes to even the think tanks assembling in the world. What are they thinking about when it comes to technology, and what little influence and impact that they have in confronting what it is that our youth are inheriting? Because if we cannot even keep up with the level of acceleration and we are the innovators, do we really actually know what it is that we're giving to our generations to come? And what are the consequences of us not knowing our innovations with the express capability of AI being almost recursive and being able to upgrade and upscale its own self? What are the ramifications that we're looking at, Emily? And how do we even enter into this fray to make a difference? And can we?
That's a good point about the I kind of think of a domino effect of these small things that we didn't necessarily notice at the beginning when we first laid out these services and these programs and these applications. The way it blows up over time can have serious consequences. And when it comes to the younger generations, and especially a whole generation of people that spend a good chunk of their day on social media, they're consistently subject to programming and reprogramming. And if they don't have the empowerment to understand that and to navigate that, then you start to lose sovereignty of self and sovereignty of thought. And if you don't have the emotional grounding and understanding to be able to navigate those fields, then it's hard for us to predict how our behavior and how our reactions are being changed and being manipulated. And again, when it comes to the people that are designing these systems and creating these programs, I don't think they necessarily know that that is what could happen down in the long run. You know, everyone has different priorities, and the culture of business right now has a specific priority. We often associate that with profit. And when it comes to this transition, as you'd mentioned, Nadia, there's a lot of different levels to this transition. There's a lot of different things that are playing at the same time. And although we are experiencing a transition in terms of technology and innovation, there's also an economic transition. There's this economic transition from a survivalist economy to a creationist economy. And that's something that the youth are aware of, but not necessarily empowered to fully understand the gravity of. But there is the recognition and the fear that we can't keep doing it the same way. And things that worked for previous generations in terms of jobs and income isn't necessarily going to work that way for us. So policy is important, and bringing youth voices into these think tanks and into these conversations is important, because we need to understand what kind of lifestyle we want moving forwards. We have a lot of life left ahead of us. So the decisions that get made today have repercussions in our life for a lot longer. So there is that awareness there.
And Emily, if we lose sovereignty or autonomy of thought to think, does that lead way for the right or the role of fulfillment to come from machines as opposed to humans?
Yeah, and I think that speaks to a definition of fulfillment, for one. Like if fulfillment, I think, is an emotional thing. It's something that comes from within, but there is satisfaction as well. There's like fulfillment and the satisfaction, and you can be satisfied with your life, and that can be a more of a process in your brain in terms of being satisfied and having that fix and that need. And you can get that dopamine hit from internet already, like from scrolling already, we can get that. But there is that concern of steering, of how we're being steered to have a particular worldview and particular expectations of reality and ourselves, and our expectations of what we should want, rather than being able to step aside, take ourselves as ourselves and be like, what do I want?
Sure.
And yeah.
Nadja, I think about, from your personal role as an innovator, as a technologist, as someone that has really stood before audiences and helped them to decipher and to really deconstruct, to bring it down to bite-sized levels of understanding of what it is that we've innovated within, in particular, the past 24 to 36 months. Do we have more of a need for innovators to become educators today in this era? Because I have a concern that we're building models, if you will, that are serving as educators. We use it, let's be honest, let's be transparent. I think all of us use AI every single day of our lives. I know that I do. There's nothing taboo about it anymore. I think the more transparent you are about using it, I honestly think the better. But to that point, Nadja, are you seeing the need for us as innovators to become educators and not only teaching the world, but teaching machines and staying ahead of them when it comes to helping to understand responsible innovation, ethical innovation, and best use cases for applications? Because we all know that innovations today can be used in a very, very unsafe way. And we'll go and jump into that with after you, Nadja, to carry on this. But I'd like for you to allow us to come into your world a little bit.
I want to go back to first principles. We all have nervous systems, and our nervous systems are freaking wrecked. So I think, before we touch on anything else, we as a species have just had a freaking insane ride. And I think every generation says that, and every generation believes that no one has ever, meant it that much or deserved it that much before. So we are just the latest. But I mean, if you just literally feel into your body as you are sitting here right now or standing, although I'm not sure who would stand for an hour, how does it feel? Like, how do you feel in the world right now? I think that's a question that we are not asking ourselves enough. Christopher, you ask about whether innovators should become educators. I think the problem is that complexity is really scary. And we live in an extremely complex world and society. And especially now, the complexity is increasing with hyperspeed or at hyperspeed. So now it's a question of, oh my God, if you didn't catch up already with navigating your nervous system, your brain, your physical being, your social being, your emotional being, there's a lot of stuff that makes up us, right? And so the education system didn't equip us to live in this world. Socialization, God bless it, did all it could, but it hasn't really done enough. And so we are left with this really just gaping void of now having to rise up to the occasion of being this incredibly evolved species that's going to tackle the bull by the horns. I mean, yeah, if this was your child that you were talking about, you'd have a little bit more empathy and go, wait, maybe we need to slow down a second. So I think the problem for me, at least, is, we can put a whole lot of labels on it, but unless we get comfortable with the uncomfortable, unless we get comfortable saying, hey, there's probably never going to be an answer to these really complex questions, and we are always going to feel like we are in Dante's Inferno and we don't know when we're going to get out of this. I think that's a much healthier way to look at things. Like, I find joy in the ridiculously absurd, not because I'm weird, although that's also the case, but because life is ridiculously absurd. And so what else am I supposed to find out of it? So I think, when we talk about should we be educating others, I think we should be thinking in public. I think there's a dishonesty in terms of just our thinking process. I don't know if you guys remember, there was a viral thing a while ago where people realized some people don't have an internal monologue, and the internet went wild and everyone was like, oh my God, some people don't think. I found it fascinating that everyone was so interested in everyone else's brain. And we don't do that. We don't share our brain. So I don't want to know what an innovator thinks. I want to know how they think, because that's really what's going to help me. If I can weave together how this person thinks and how that person thinks, then I'm also an innovator, because we need to innovate here. Like, this is your best friend or your worst enemy. And sure. I can tell you, in a world where AI is the new brain, you have to use it as a thinking partner, because otherwise it's going to, eclipse you as your own thinking partner.
As abstract as almost chaotic as what you just said sounds, I find it rather appropriate for the mindset of the innovators heading into the frontier. Is this what more or less you're conveying, Nadja?
Yeah, I think, if we are all incredibly brutally honest with ourselves, we don't know what the world is going to look like in a year from now. Sure. Everything that we held dear to be reality, like the foundations of reality, are no longer true. Like, everything is up in flux. So there's no way that we can prepare for anything, get comfortable with the madness and the chaos, and then start surfing, I guess, is the the takeaway.
Carrie, can you route in on that? I know there's something that you want to express on that based on the work that you're doing. I find
Yeah.
it so intriguing and fascinating of this outlook for the frontier. I've never considered it this way before. Thank you, Naja. Carrie, please.
Yeah, I think we have to stop and just really insert, we need to touch grass, right? We need to go out and explore the world and get connected with our human friends, because like you said earlier, with AI, it's hearing us, it's seeing us, but it's also learning from us. And I did a really interesting prompt the other day when I was using AI. I said, tell me something about myself that I don't know, right? And there it was. It spit out this beautiful paragraph about me. And these were things that I never took the time to add into any of the information that I've shared with AI. And so I found it really amazing how we can connect with AI, but how on the opposite side, we really need to make sure we're connecting with our friends, collaborating on a different level. Because just like what was said, we're in this warp speed of development, and we really need to make sure that we're staying grounded to actually reality, making sure we're taking in situational awareness, making sure that we're using mental health strategies for ourselves, whether it's breathing, box breath, other types of areas to really help with our mental health, so that we can be better served in this world. And I think as we go back to even the education part, we're learning so much from AI, but we need to take time and understand the safety side of this, that our youth needs to recognize the manipulative design that is inside a lot of our tech, so they can choose when they want to participate and when they don't want to participate. And I think that just goes right back into my formula, the SEEK method: safety, empathy, empowerment, and knowledge. That's where it really resonates with me.
It seems to me that there's a certain level of fortification that needs to happen within for us to be able to enter into this frontier of where we find ourselves, Elena. I sit here and think about the comments just expressed by Naja and Carrie. I remember Naja gave an example so many summits ago about she was in a taxi cab somewhere in the world. She's well-traveled, but she was in a taxi cab and she asked the cab driver about, or perhaps it was an Uber driver, forgive me, Naja, about, have you heard of ChatGPT? And they haven't. And I think about, Elena, your sentiments when you talk about the disbalance often that you relate to Europe and America, if you will, the West, and then elsewhere, obviously, around the world. How do we keep up with this disbalance and this cadence and this tempo of accelerated fashion when it comes to the different types of innovations that we're seeing that are so powerful when adopted, when even known that they exist, that are so powerful in the hands of people that have never accessed such utility and tool? It seems to me that this speaks to what you've talked about in the past about the necessity for collaboration. Is this a time that's needed for collaboration more so than ever before? Or do we serve better in the benefit of going off into this creative renaissance that's rapidly approaching, that really feels so present? Do we start to operate almost in a more minimal fashion as opposed into group and startup traditional fashion of innovating product for product? Is this the time for thinkers?
Yeah, I think that this is a moment where, like, not just collaboration is needed, but time is really needed, because we have a moment where there are people that have a lot of money, innovators that have a lot of money, but seems to me that the difficulty is about finding time even for these people. And I think when it comes to innovation, the issue is really about time, like what type of consequence the innovations we develop will have in a short and longer time. And when it comes to younger people, it's also the same issue. Many times it's not about just finding the money to finance their ideas. Like the Draghi report talked about a 800 billion investment gap, which I think it's part of the problem, because if there isn't like time given freely by more experienced people to those who receive the funding, there is not going to be much change. And at the same time, I think that we should collaborate in bringing our approaches together, because I think in Europe there is this idea of don't do something risky because you're going to end up very badly. Like, don't do an innovation because like disrupting the status quo is a bad idea. And I guess this comes from our history. And I think the American Revolution is so interesting because it's this case of a colony that actually tried to do something risky and it turned out very, very well. But at the same time, I think Americans, they tend too much on the other side. Sometimes it's everything so fast. And right now, I really believe that we should find a middle ground between being so constricted as Europeans, because the risk is about leaving big parts of our population behind, and being so fast-paced as Americans, because you might have very good short-term outcomes, but then you might have bigger risk in the long run, and to always factor in how important time is. Yes, and also I thought it was so brilliant for Naja to mention Dante, because I think in Italy we have, I mean, of course we have Dante, but we have a lot of culture, and many times culture, it seems to lack value, and it's also something that requires time. So I think there is this idea of almost like losing time in Italy. We have this otium idea, which I think complements very well AI and engineering and everything that is so fast-paced and efficient. The two of them have to go together.
Perhaps in this equivalent, the time is the greatest disruptor. You know, I sit here under the sound of each of your voices and I just feel the synergistic harmony that is relaying, at least in my mind, of how we enter into the frontier, Emily. And I think about the sentiments that Elena just conveyed when we talk about time, that so many people are grasping for just a little bit more time to be able to implement whatever type of strategy or whatever type of framework or whatever type of manifesto that they want to insert, to be able to make sure that not only themselves that get it right, but certainly to those that deploy. But it seems like we are ill-sufficient of time. Maybe, my goodness, the models that are being developed just last week are almost archaic compared to the ones that arrive days or weeks later, that there's just not enough time for the human populace to wrap their mind around the incremental progressive growth of what's being deployed and distributed into the world. And there's a consequence to pay for that, isn't there? That we continue to see marginalized communities or communities, let's just say the technologists, us and them, technologists and everyone else versus everyone else fits into a wide bracket of a bucket that aren't served and they're not given the opportunity. But it seems to me, Emily, that now is the time more than ever for greater cultural contribution that's needed in this world. You know, we talk about the superhero engine or She Summit that we had this year. We talk about the need for more women and women founders to be funded so that they get implemented, that they can create and build and contribute to this nexus, if you will, of this corpus that's being developed and built of semi-intelligence. And when that doesn't happen, there is something to be missed, because these models are so invasive in our lives. They will control our algorithms. They will be the ones that are conducting surgery in surgical theaters. They'll one day become politicians, believe it or not. They'll be serving us in all different types of capacity in the world. And do we have enough time, A, to wrap our minds around what this means for humanity now that we have this new alien species? And I say it just like that with great intent. This new species that's arrived, do we have enough time? And then B, my bigger concern is for the ones that did not get the opportunity to contribute, knowing that these machines take from the ones that instilled the data from their consciousness or from their mindsets to these. Are we about to inherit the greatest disbalance we've ever come in contact with, that where all humanity did not get the opportunity to contribute to these machines that will very much help guide and run and govern society. I see a great threat with that when it comes to marginalization. And do we have enough time, as Elena has said, to do anything about it?
I mean, the issue of legacy perpetuating is very important to me. And legacy is something that I consider a lot. And I think our technology and the algorithms that we rely on are kind of a mirror to that legacy in terms of representation of what we see and whose voices and stories are being accurately portrayed. You know, we've seen over the years how there have been discrepancies between what we see coming out of this technology versus reality, and that's because of our perception, and it's because of the perception of the people that are designing that originally, and that bias is perpetuated through these programs, and then we inherit that too. It comes into us through that steering and through that programming. And when it comes to time, keeping us in a state of rush and making us feel like we don't have enough time is just one of the tools of oppression. It's one of the ways in which we are kept distracted from the greater issues at hand, but also ourselves, our internal state, our emotional state, and it prevents us from pursuing that fulfillment, as we spoke about earlier, and it prevents us from pursuing the opportunities to create a lifestyle of our choosing. So that is something that I'm aware of. I'm very aware of how important it is that we bring as many voices and perspectives in as possible to this, because when you have a problem, if you're only going from one perspective, it's going to be hard for you to find a solution.
As remedial as it may sound, Elena, I must ask as a follow-up, what are the benefits of more time?
Well, I really think that the biggest issue with innovation is that you don't get right away what is going to be applied to. So I guess, I don't know, for example, now with XR, we use it for gaming mainly, but I think it's going to be used a lot for health, for example. But maybe in 10 years, we're going to use it for something that's completely unrelated to that. Like, this only comes with time and with including more people that were not working on that specific innovation right away, so they didn't have such a specific idea of it. And I think that if you right away feel the urge to define what you're creating or even regulate what you're creating, that is going to be very restrictive of that innovation, and that you need to give innovation time to grow like spontaneously. I think that's something very important.
And I find it fascinating, Carrie, when I think about when we started to see the deployment of these generative AI models and diffusion models, GAN CNNs, if you will, that it was said, it was bifurcated really, that on one hand, we'll have more time than we've ever had before because the models will be able to do our work, Naja. And Carrie, it was also said within the same breath that we would either have more time or we would do 10 to 20x more work than what we do now. I certainly feel like we don't have more time. So it seems that we know where that's led us to. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, time is precious, right? And we only have so much in life. And I have to go back to making sure that all the communities are heard with our time. And it seems like the equalizer is always education. And I don't know if everybody knows that there's a free resource. It's called edx.org. And some of our top universities around the world offer free education to anybody around this world. And this is one of the ways that we can hear the voices that we need to hear, the voices of our youth, and that they can be educated and come to the table and have critical thinking skills. And, because I look at our youth and I say, protecting them today, those are the ones that are going to be our tech creators, our developers, our innovators, our decision makers of tomorrow. And so the time that we give them today, whether we're mentoring younger people or our youth, is so critical. And like you all have said, we only have so much time on Earth, and we have to make sure we use it wisely. And I think by prioritizing safety, ethics, and digital responsibility, we're going to be shaping and helping the future and making sure that we're using our time really well.
And lastly, Naja, we'll end with you. We have to bring this to a conclusion, but my goodness gracious, I can go the distance with each of you. I have such an appreciation and quite frankly, an admiration for those that are sitting here before me now. And Naja, we talk about this subject of time. We talk about there's multi-layers and heading into this new state of frontier intelligence. It's dramatic to me because as a technologist that's so entrenched in technology, I realize from my lens that most people do not see the coming wave, and that everything that we're dealing with tonight when it comes to AI is nothing compared as to someone said that we won't even know what the world will look like a year from now. When it comes to this frontier that we're entering into, whether we like it or not, what are the things that you think is most important to convey to our youth and equipping them internally with what they need within to be able to go into this new terrain?
Yeah, I'll make the answer very personal, in the hopes that there is a young person out there watching this. When I was young, it was also a new world to me for very different reasons to the world that's new to the young people of today. But I was full of dreams. I was an idealist. I was called naive. And then everyone assured me that I would grow up to the point where I would accept this world that we live in and all its problems because, it's just young people who dream, but it's not possible. I never accepted it, but it was very hard because they were not systems that supported my belief. Today there is. So I managed to hold on for dear life. I think if you are young today, the battle is much bigger than it was when I was, a young person 20 years ago. But you also have tools that didn't exist back then. The gift of tools that ultimately end up enslaving us is on the way there. It also empowers us. So I would say that, be very realistic about what is happening. I think the youth of today are more realistic than we are because they've come into a world, that's very different from the one that we came into. One might even say they are more nihilistic. But see the reality for what it is and understand that tomorrow is yours. And start today, and you already have, because what you guys are doing, the next generation, is not what the millennials did. We said we don't like the old systems, but sure, we'll play by the rules anyway because we need them. Gen Z and beyond say, I don't like it, I'm not going to do it, bye. So I guess just keep on doing that, but do it in a way that, when you become parents, that you can still look back and be proud of what you did.
Sure enough, I certainly hope, Elena, that ends us off on a good note. Audience, I mean this in earnest and sincerity. When it comes to Emily, Elena, Carrie, and Naja, go follow them. Go not only see what they're doing today, but what they've been doing, let's just say in the past 6 months to a year. I believe that you'll find it rather intriguing. You'll be edified, and they are great people to follow when it comes to the endeavors of the career path, the human path, and geared towards better understanding. I really have a type of adoration for each of you, and I'm so thankful to be able to sit here under the sound of your voice. You're professionals in every sense of the word. You are leaders, and you're doing incredible things. Thank you so much.
Thank you.